gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Hello and welcome to the election week edition of Political Smackdown. We're recording on Friday, November 1st. Andy, apparently it's trash day, so we're going to take out the garbage to start off with this week.
Yay!
Last week, Trump dominated the media with his job at McDonald's. This week, he's dominated the media from Biden's latest comment, which, given past comments by other major Democrats, I don't know that we could call it a gaffe, but Trump has certainly taken advantage of it. Media saturation matters, but is this going to make a difference, or is this just a funny thing that happened on the way to the polling site?
This is just a 24-hour thing. Now, I like this better.
We're 48 hours into it.
Well, I mean, it's just already come and gone it was a good hit. I think this is better than the McDonald's thing because, I mean, it's so visual. I mean, he put on his Hunter orange vest and he got up in the garbage truck. Don't know if he could find the first gear in the thing or not, but, you know, I mean, it was very visual, and I thought it really was a funny looking thing. I mean, he's sitting over there.
Actually sitting on the passenger
Yeah, he
side.
called shotgun on it. So, I mean, it was funny, and everybody had a good laugh about it.
Especially when he almost needed help to get up in the truck.
Well, you know, I guess he's of that age. You know,
Yes, he is 78 years old.
I've heard tell he's 78 years old. So, you know, that's just how it happens when you get that old. You can't get around like you used to.
And when you run your mouth and you say all those things, then you might as well own it.
But it was very, like I said, it was a very visual thing. I think everybody had a little bit of laugh. I wish President Biden would be a little bit more careful with some of these things, but Uncle Joe does the best he can. And, you know, it's just one of those things that things were said that I wish had been unsaid. But, you know, it wasn't intended the way it came out. But let's face it, Wes, we've all said things that came out wrong. All four of us have done it. And if he could have took it back, he would have. But you know, it is what it is. And the president made light of it, and it got some traction out of it, and got some airtime. At least this time, he didn't insult anybody. I mean, he made a joke out of it.
He insulted half the country.
No, this time President Trump didn't insult anybody.
Okay.
He made light out of it,
About
which is kind of a
climbing into the
change of
truck.
pace for him.
Actually, I thought in his Wisconsin rally that night where he wore it on stage,
Yep.
he was self-deprecating of himself. He said the only reason he wore it on stage, he told them no, but they told him he looked thinner in it. He said something to the effect, Lord knows I need to look thinner.
Either that or he couldn't get it
And
off
then-
one. I don't know which.
And then he talked in the rally about looking at how high those steps were to get in that truck and wondered, can I do it? He was self-deprecating. I mean, this is a snapshot and a soundbite in time, just like the McDonald's thing was, and Trump made the most of it. And I don't know if there's 3% undecideds that don't like either one, that are blue-collar people. You can see how this type of thing could help him at the edges. So I don't know, but I thought he handled this much better. Poor old Joe, Andy, as you've noted through the years, as much as you like him, he's been a gaffe machine as long as you've known him. He messes around and says things that he shouldn't have said, but they've tried hard to hold him down during these last several weeks of the campaign, but they haven't been quite successful.
Well, I mean, when you're president, you can just hide him so long.
Yeah.
I'm
There
sure
is
the vice
work to
president's
do.
pulling
Yeah.
her hair out over this one. We're not able to get a picture of it, but we saw a picture on Facebook. Ted Alexander donned the vest and was carrying the trash out. So this has gone
Said he was going to the polling site Trumpster diving to the
Trumpster diving, right?
Was he counting the homeless as he went?
I don't know. You'll have to ask Ted. But y'all, Trump is a master at trolling Democrats and the media and throwing their disparagements right back at them. And he did this one in such a self-deprecating way. I can't help but to think at the edges it was helpful.
I couldn't help but laugh at it. I mean, really. I mean,
You can't help. Betsy, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, it's just a moment in time, and I hope that the voters will remember what he said before instead of, just laughing at the fact that he almost couldn't get up in the truck. And it is funny that he got, after he said that about all that was said at his rally in New York about garbage and about Puerto Rico and all, then he's trying to turn this into something that's lighthearted. Somebody has encouraged him to change his tactics since we're so close to the end of the election cycle. I just hope the voters remember who he actually is.
Well, I think most of us have a pretty good idea that's the one thing about this race. We've got two known quantities, two administrations, and I think the American public recognizes that.
And I think this is the first that we've ever had a past president and a vice president run against each other in the history of our country.
Maybe a past and a vice, maybe.
Maybe going back to Grover Cleveland a long time ago. I'm not quite sure, but it's not been recent.
Yeah, it certainly makes for interesting numbers. Andy, you and I were talking yesterday, the targeting that we're seeing is just unreal. Wall Street Journal had an article this morning on the number of texts we're getting, and don't reply stop because that means it's an active number and you wind up getting more texts. It's a different world. When we ran, Betsy, you and I were party chairs.
Yes.
Mike, you ran. And now with AI, I think it's really growing how directly they're targeting. But before we get into who's actually voted, how has this changed electioneering? Betsy, I'll start with you. You've been party chair for how many years?
Well,
over time and very active within the party.
I was 9 years as party chair here in Cleveland, and then 10 years as the chair of District 10, and now I'm District 14. Well, used to we depended on paper, mailings and telephoning. You didn't have text. You didn't have all of even cell phones. Think about that. It's in a different world, and you're right. Texting is so much cheaper, and you see, and you get those texts where if you don't send $10, that campaign is going to fold right there without your $10. And yes, you try to stop it, and you seem like you get more. You're right, Wes, but that's very different. And like now they send pictures, like Andy was showing us before he came in, and I may be stealing your thunder, Andy, but I thought that was neat that they showed he hadn't voted, so they showed the picture of his polling site, and I bet they'll be sending it to me because I haven't voted yet either. So I think, and of course, it's just so much of it with all the commercials on TV. And I've always said I I wish we could ban TV commercials, but they work. So, but it's a different world, a different world.
It is, Andy. You referring to the picture. Last week you got a picture of where to vote early. Now you get a picture of your home polling site on your phone.
Yep.
Talk about pushing the vote out.
Yeah. Well, Wes called me yesterday and we were talking about some of these questions, and I was telling him, I said, the one thing we've not really talked about is how the sophistication has really gone down. Because when we started this in the late 80s, I mean, all we had was a bunch of landline numbers, and you had some addresses, and if you could get 2/3 of those correct that didn't bounce back on you, you were flying. And then on election day, we had the old trick that you took a piece of carbon paper and a piece of paper and you slid under where they signed people in, and I forget how periodically you could go in there and get the ones that you could pull that paper, put another piece of paper and carbon paper in, and get a new one, and you went and saw who had actually signed in that had voted. Then you go back and you get that list of precinct who had voted and who hadn't, and called them and went and hauled them or did whatever. I mean, it worked, though. It was labor intensive.
It was labor intensive.
But it worked. And now you've got all this that you hit a button. I don't even know if you have to do that. It's probably so all automated now. It's just amazing to me, Wes. And like I counted yesterday about how many texts I got. I got 25 in one day.
Really?
25 separate texts. That's not even counting the emails I got. Senator Tester out in Montana, he's had a flat tire, I don't know, about 6 different times. And he said if I didn't send him $5 to fix his flat tire, he couldn't get out to talk to the people. And it really is, he showed he had a flat tire. And he's had to fix his flat tire so he could get out there and go see voters. And, it's nationwide now.
But another thing, Wes, that's a major difference is that we don't depend so much on seeing the campaign signs out in people's yards. Now, the Republicans always outnumber us as far as signs. But this year, and I remember when Mike Easley ran, and he didn't put out signs. And we thought, what? And he won. But you depend on like the texts, the emails, and so forth.
He didn't have time. He was arranging the land thing down.
No, this is before that. This is 6 years before that.
I'm not going to make a comment about not having campaign signs. Mike, one aspect of this, I got a piece of mail, very anti-abortion, coming to a Republican voter by an individual who's not a Republican, but it was paid for by a Democrat super PAC. And that's another example of the targeting, trying to influence my vote.
I've gotten more mail from Democrats opposing Republicans than I have from Republicans promoting Republicans this year for the first time. I've gotten a few in the past, but I'm going to tell you, between TV and North Carolina at least, between TV and mail, the Democrats have spent tons of money being critical of Republican candidates.
And I think that's a defining part of this race. And Betsy, I know you'll disagree with me, but the Harris campaign strategy is not Trump. And
because I have a better idea. You didn't finish it up.
I'm anxious to see what her ideas are.
Well, she's already told you every time. You don't listen to her speeches.
More taxes?
No, less taxes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right.
Well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back and we'll stick our neck out a little bit. Again, we're recording on Friday, election's Tuesday, so by the time most of you watch this, we're already going to have egg on our face potentially. We'll be right back.
Cakes and cookies, toys and gifts, Christmas at your fingertips.
It's the shopping event of the season, the Southern Christmas Show, November 14th through 24th at the Park Expo and Conference Center. Celebrate the 12 days of Christmas, a countdown of Yuletide cheer brimming with festive decor and seasonal magic. Buy tickets at southernchristmasshow.com.
Let's go to the Southern Christmas Show.
Tune in to Senior Moments here on C19 TV. I am Jackie Sibley Newton with Terabella Assisted Living. Whether you are a senior planning for your own future or helping someone make decisions, Senior Moments has got information to share. We talk about the wealth of services, activities, and healthy living options available to you here in our area. That's Senior Moments on C19 and also on C19.tv.
Welcome back. There's still a lot of trash talking going on behind the scenes. We'll not force you to listen to, but as we get to Election Day, it makes a difference who's voting. Mike, you've got some numbers, some trends. What are you seeing? And we'll go around the table and see
Well, I'll
what
just give you a few.
may matter.
A few of the big ones statewide are very similar to Cleveland County. Democrats statewide are 50,000 votes behind Republicans, and they're only 32.7% of the voters, 5.6% less than 2020, the last presidential cycle. Republicans this year are at 34.1, which is 2.4% more than 2020, and unaffiliateds have increased the most. They're up 3.1%, and they're 32.9. For the first time, unaffiliateds have passed Democrats statewide in number of voters. That shouldn't surprise people totally because they're the ones that most young people are registering as. Another big thing statewide is in 2020, African Americans were 19.6% of the early vote through this many days. They're 17.5. And I'll leave that for the statewide. But in Cleveland County, we almost hit 50% on Thursday, October 31st. Rounded to the nearest 0.5%, it is 50%. But so about 50% have voted, and probably while we're sitting here taping, we've passed 50% with roughly 2 days to go. Looks like we might be somewhere around 75% like we were 4 years ago. Could be a little more, a little less. In Cleveland County, in 2020, African Americans were 19.29% of the vote, and this year they're only 16.9. So in Cleveland County, the African American vote is down 2.44% with 2 days left in early voting. That's a bad sign for Democrats because they are a big part of the Democratic base. So whether that leads into anything, but we've had a pretty good turnout. Republicans are 44%, 15,400 of the voters. Unaffiliated is 9,706, and Democrats 9,654. And Wes, I guess since you hadn't voted, there's not many libertarians have voted yet.
Don't let the cat out of the bag on that, Mike. He might get kicked out of the Republican Party yet.
Wes is registered Republican for anybody that thinks when we kid, but he does have a libertarian bend.
Streak.
And it's,
But
it's pretty wide.
I think that's enough.
Enough on Wes.
Thank you. Betsy, moving on, without getting into predictions, what do these numbers indicate to you overall, generic ballot? Are there some trends here that not only in North Carolina, but we may see in other swing states?
Well, for years, you know, the Republicans would not encourage their voters to vote early. They wanted, and you know, vote on election day, and it was the Democrats that took advantage of early voting. Well, the Republicans have caught up with us. Now, what we need to do, Democrats, is you need to go vote. I mean, yes, we're lagging behind turning out at the polls in Cleveland County, but you know, the fat lady's not through singing yet. And so you've got till through Tuesday, so go vote. But I see from the National Republican Party that came down, you know, to vote early, and you see the correspondence to it. And I did see one figure that 48.4% of those affected in the 25 counties affected by Helena have voted in those counties, and that, I thought that was good. But yes, I see the fact that that now, and you know, maybe there'll be less people voting on election day if all of them go vote early. So that means maybe there'll be more Democrats who end up voting on election day.
Well, I think that is an interesting point. Andy, do you think the Republicans are cannibalizing election day voting with the early turnout, or is that trend going to continue through election day?
No, I think they're just banking their votes is what they're actually doing. I think you're going to see a larger turnout by Democrats coming. That's just what I think is going to happen, because I think really when you get to there's just a lot of people that are like me. They like to go vote. This traditional thing, especially it tends to be older. Now, we had some numbers earlier said that people more my age are voting earlier, but you know, it's a change that we're starting to see in the way people like to vote, and it's slowly changing more and more every cycle. It's just, I just like voting on election day. I like to go out, I like to talk to the poll workers, I like to talk to the people that are out there working for candidates. Mike and I have been known to ride around in some polls and talk to people and just to kind of get a feel for what's going on out there. And we have a lot of fun doing that.
And sometimes we've seen a little excitement.
Every once in a while.
Every once in a while.
We hadn't seen any blood let yet.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. Let's get to some predictions. Andy, who's going to carry North Carolina in the presidential race, and who's going to be the next president?
I think it's going to be very close. I think Trump may eke out North Carolina. I don't know that we'll know election night who's going to be president. I think this thing's going to drag on.
Betsy?
I think Harris is going to eke it out, but I think it's going to be very close in North Carolina, and Harris is going to win the presidency.
Mike?
Well, I'm a numbers person. If you take the numbers at raw face value and the betting markets, Trump is about a 60% favorite to win the national election in the Electoral College. He's about, depending on which group you do that does averages, in RCP, which I follow mostly, Trump is actually up in the popular vote by 0.2 or 0.3% in the polling they're doing nationally, which really doesn't mean anything, as we know. It's the Electoral College, but it's different. Biden was like 7 points ahead of him 3 or 4 days out 4 years ago, and Hillary was 2 or 3 points ahead of him and won. So my gut feeling is Trump wins North Carolina, and if the polling data has not done any different than it's done in the past, Trump wins the Electoral College. I'd be surprised if he wins the electoral vote. On the other hand, Andy, I wouldn't be surprised if it went the other way.
But that's what I'm saying, Mike. It is still in flux right now.
Yes.
It's so close. And we've still got a lot of votes that have not been cast out there.
Yeah, half
I
of
mean,
them.
if we, and now what I'm saying is looking at the trend as it sits right here on a Friday morning. We still got 2 days of early voting going. We still got election day coming. We still got a huge get out the vote effort coming. This thing is by far not over yet.
But trends don't change.
You've got to.
They could though.
They could,
They
but they
usually
don't.
don't the last weekend.
And I agree, the polls tend to undercount Republicans. I think Trump wins North Carolina. I think Trump becomes president. And I don't think it's as close as a lot of people are calling. Whoever wins, I hope it's big enough we don't spend the next month having a fight over it.
Well, I don't think you're going to get your wish on that one, Wes.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, Mike, who's going to be governor?
Well, that's pretty easy because of his travails that I don't think he handled very well. I think Stein wins. May not quite make double digits like the polling, but I think he will handily defeat Mark Robinson.
Betsy, I'm sure you agree.
Oh, I do agree. I mean, Mark Robinson was an awful candidate, and he just, you know, you thank y'all for the president that you gave us.
I told you need to send him a card, Betsy.
Thank you, Carl.
Any disagreement on that race?
No, but it also proves the point you better pay your pornographer off.
Well, you'd know more about
And you
that than
back
I would, I
taxes.
guess.
No, I think Robinson knows it better.
All right, Council of State. What's going to be the breakdown?
I think that you're going to see probably, I think Hunt will probably be our lieutenant governor. I don't think there's any real question. Elaine Marshall, I don't think there'll be any change in that. I think Troxler will probably still be agriculture commissioner. I think Causey, that one.
Oh, I hope
it is.
that.
I mean, it's right there. I think he could lose.
Yes, he
I mean, there's a
could.
lot of controversy about that buddy of his he hired to drive him around, like drove him to New Mexico for some kind of conference. I mean, there's a lot there. I think he could be on the bubble.
And the fact he's never had a town hall meeting about raising insurance rates, and he's raised them 10 times.
So 7-3
Yes.
split?
I think he could
Oh,
be.
I think Jeff Jackson will win Attorney General.
Oh, I don't think there's much doubt on
Yeah.
that, yeah.
And
He's only 3 points up, though, in the WRAL poll this
That's
week.
all you got to have.
that's all you got to have.
Well, it is a WRAL
And of course, I
poll.
really wish Braxton would win labor because he is a working man.
It
and
is,
it would
but
be
see,
great
that's
to
the thing.
have one.
People don't know enough about
Well,
that race.
it's-
That one's tough.
Thoughts on Council of State?
Well, I think because of Robinson and because of the very negative and often untrue ads that have been run against our governor, Lieutenant Governor candidate Weatherman and our AG candidate Bishop, I think those are tough races for both of them to win. I'm more hopeful for Bishop than I am for Howe, although I hope they both win. But I think Republicans do good to win 5 of the Council of State seats. I sure hope they win auditor and treasurer. They're clearly good candidates there. I do think I actually think this, other than the governor's race, I think Troxler probably has the highest percentage. He has a lot of Democratic crossover vote historically.
Yeah.
But then you got to remember about Superintendent of Public Instruction. I think that lady is.
But do you know in WRAL poll, she's 1 point ahead of Mo Green this week.
Well, I
That's
saw
hard to
Mo-
believe, but that's what their poll
It
said.
is. I still don't see how she beat y'all's incumbent on that. I really don't.
Well,
It's all
same-
about turnout.
Same way some other people win Republican primaries that shouldn't.
And I think Wesley Harris has a good chance of being our next treasurer. He's,
All right.
Okay, here we move on.
Real quick, let's get to some local races. Are there going to be any surprises? Betsy?
It all depends on who goes to the polls. Of course, I hope that the Democrats win, and I hope that even down to the commissioners, Manuel Hunt is right in there. And if you go by signs, Kevin Gordon is going to lead the race.
Andy, any surprises coming?
Yes.
I mean, we're 65% generic ballot in Cleveland County, in my opinion.
I think Coleman Hunt is going to be on the Board of Education. I'm hearing too many Republicans saying that they made a mistake with him, that it's time to have somebody level-headed and to have somebody of the other party and of another race, and that he adds a lot to that board, and they made a mistake not putting him back.
Interesting. He's certainly well thought of. Mike?
Well, the only way I differ with Andy is I think Coleman gets more votes than any Democratic member, but when you win 2-1 in a county, like you do in Cleveland County, that's a ton of Republicans crossing over.
Yep.
So I think he'll come up short, but I do not think he would be a bad member at all of the board.
Yeah.
County commissioners will be a wallop, as will, our Republicans running for the legislature. And gosh, in Cleveland County, Tim Moore probably get 80%.
Oh,
Well,
I
it's
think
his home county.
Republicans are going to sweep the
But
ballot.
in the Board of Education, if you go by how many doors have been knocked, Rod Powell will be elected at the top of the ticket because he's been out 2 or 3 days a week.
Well, he's sure got some dumb stuff on Facebook.
Oh,
All right, let's quickly move the lightning round. Mike, what have you got for us
Well,
today?
yesterday was Reformation Day, the anniversary of the day in 1517 that Martin Luther nailed the 95 Theses to the church door in Wittenberg, Germany, after he, reading Romans, and came to the conclusion that the just shall live by faith. And Romans 1:16 meant that you didn't get saved by what you did through sacraments. You got saved by the grace of God through faith alone in Christ alone. It turned the world upside down.
And thank goodness some poor old printer printed a Bible that allowed the masses to become literate and understand
the
that.
Gutenberg printing press, the Reformation would have been hard to
that's
have.
true.
Yeah, Andy,
That
what
is
you got?
true.
All right, we're turning our clocks back. We're going to get
That's
our
right.
sleep this weekend. And there are 30 states that are thinking about trying to go back to just standard time, but they can't because the Congress in 1966 passed a law that called the Standard Time Act, that they are going to have to go through and change the law to where we can go back. Right now, only 2 states, Hawaii and Arizona, are still on standard time. And how they got around that, I do not know.
Talk about congressional overreach. Betsy, what do you have for us?
Well,
we'll
I'm
let you wind it up.
I'm still on voting. Women, I'm talking to you, the women of Cleveland County. We comprise the majority of the voting electorate. Please go vote. We have got so much on the ballot. Think about your health care, and please go out and vote for the Democrats.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we'll come back next week and see who has to eat crow. Hope you have a good week.